Welcome to Flesh and Pod, a flesh and blood podcast, breaking down weekly news and notes from the tournament scene, community drama, game strategy, and more. And now, here are your hosts, Darick and Logan.
Hello, and welcome to episode 147 of Flesh and Pod. My name is Logan. I am your host. And with me, as always, now people, like friends, we're audio only today because Charmer, and this is our dedication. This is how dedicated we are to providing you with the high quality entertainment that you've come to expect from Flesh and Pod. Darick, in an effort to pick up a litter box, managed to destroy his lower back and cannot walk, and instead crawled into his office on his hands and knees to get to a recordable position for you. So everybody needs to make sure they thank Darick Oswald for his commitment to Flesh and Pod and to the greater FAP community. So Darick, we salute you.
Yeah, well, you know, commit to the bit and all that. I wasn't going to be the reason that the streak got ruined. It is what it is. It's audio only. It's my fault because I actually can't reach my DSLR to turn it on and take the lens cap off because I'm stuck. I was telling Logan before we started recording, I'm stuck in a half open position. Like imagine a pocket knife that is rusted half open, and that's essentially me. So I cannot fully extend my back. I've only ever thrown it out this bad once before, and it's been a few years. And this one was entirely like I only have the most embarrassing injuries. I never do it doing something cool. When I tore my hamstring, it was a non-contact injury playing flag football. It was literally just me planting my foot wrong, not wearing cleats, uneven ground. And I went to make a cut. Heel hit the ground, hamstring said, haha, and snapped like a rubber band. And then obviously I tore my bicep bowling.
That's still my favorite.
Which it's again, like not even like, I don't, know what I'm doing bowling. And maybe it was like an equipment misuse. No, like I've bowled my entire life. My varsity jacket, my letter, if you will, for varsity was in bowling. Just freak accident. And now the litter box. So, I only have the most cool and interesting stories for all of my severe injuries.
No argument here. That you have found a way to make the things that just tell me that I'm old when they happen to me interesting. So I applaud you for that commitment to the bit, as it were. Did you do anything in Flesh and Blood at all? Okay, just as a random question.
I did not since the last time. So we did nothing like notable. So we did the pre-release the last time that we had spoke, but Armories as of right now are still on Wednesday, so I can't make those. I have been playing on Talishar some Aurora. I think I tweeted something along the lines of like, I still really want to play Assassin. It's my favorite class, but why did LSS make Aurora so fun?
She is fun.
And then I was actually having what I feel like was some moderate success. So I was kind of curious how other lists were evolving. Like I just brewed something and started throwing it. I didn't think it would go well. I just wanted to kind of dink around, and then I was doing kind of well. So I started looking around, and it turns out, at least based on what's been released on YouTube, I know a lot of people are probably keeping stuff,
under wraps a little bit.
Under wraps a bit, yeah, leading into Worlds and whatever. But for what's out there on YouTube, I landed in a pretty similar spot to what some of the other folks had. Yep. I think the biggest difference is that I am just not running blues. I think blues don't belong. So I am hard Cheerios Aurora, at least where I'm currently at. Only a small handful of yellows, and they're the ones that are also like good when you play them. And then the rest is, I would make Mara so proud. A lot of 0 for 4s. The stuff that you do pay for is so few and far between that a lot of the times it's either replacing itself or you're just banking on playing it with Tunic, right? It's more like a setup thing. And when I say replace itself, I'm on again, I've seen a couple of lists floating around, but I'm a big fan of the red electrify, especially with the stuff that you can do with like eclectic magnetism, where you get it like kind of as a surprise, and if it's coming from the arsenal, you draw the card. So that's what I mean by like replace itself. So you're either pitching a red and you're not technically down a card, or again, if you can do it off of Tunic, then you just go up straight value, and it's been really good for me. So that's what I have done. I've played a lot of Aurora on Talishar, but I didn't get to do any like fun sanctioned events, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I went and played my first draft of Rosetta. Had a lot of fun. Played Aurora mainly because I had Dagon to my left, and knowing that he was going to cut Earth hard because that's what he's going to do.
What?
I know, right?
He strikes me as an Ocilio gamer, just hard.
Sure. Ocilio, yeah, isn't a fatigue deck, so no. And so I just was like, okay. And he paid me back in pack 2. You know, it just simpatico. He was my only loss, but it was very, very close. The only reason his win condition against me was, am I dead before I hit 10 foot tall and bulletproof? And I couldn't kill him before he hit his 10 foot tall and bulletproof. So I died. That card in limited is, especially in Verdance, it's a fucking bomb. And so yeah, I went 2-1 and felt fine. I have also been fucking around with Aurora quite a bit in Talishar. There are, so like the core cards are the same, I think. You know, you're always playing your lightning surges, your gone in a flashes, even your fries and stuff like that. But then you have the other side of it where some are playing, because you're always playing Arc Lightning and you're always going to play Channel Lightning Valley too.
Yeah.
But I've seen some lists, and I've been having fun with this. Playing Flicker Wisp in the list has been awesome amounts of fun.
Yeah, I messed around with that a little bit. It's not in my current version, but
it's a blast, though.
it is a lot of fun. I ended up cutting it just because I didn't have enough supporting stuff. It was one of those things where like when it worked, it was really good, but a lot of times I was getting less value. Like I was trying to essentially line it up. So it's like, all right, if I'm playing this, is it, you know, getting me 3 to 4? And there was a lot of times where it wasn't. And so that's why
I think God, it's really hard not to get 3 or 4 out of it. But
again, it might just be
the way the list is built.
The way with mine, I was averaging 2.
Okay. Yeah, I think that when I end up in my Flicker Wisp turns, I'm averaging 4 to 6. So that seems fine. I'm also like usually trying to set up that with a somersault turn.
Oh, okay.
To just go insane. So that's a lot of what I'm doing with it. But God, I wonder, is this the episode where we just do we take your list and dissect it and just do a list breakdown? Probably not.
We do the Aurora. So I will say this is my hot take. I think that a lot of folks are really undervaluing Vexing Quillhan. I'm not seeing it like in many lists at all, and I really like it right now because the list again it varies, right? If you're more mid-rangey, I think that Quillhan probably not the way to go. And if you're
playing 6 or more blues, you play Grasp,
right? Yeah. As somebody who is not though, I'm like, well, as long as I'm always triggering it when I have played my Arc Lightning, it's always worth, you know, quote unquote 3 anyway, which is all really my Grasp is usually worth is the 3 block.
Because you have to pitch, right?
Right. Because I'm like, let's be honest, I'm never pitching to it. So I was like, all right, well, if I can have 3 offense or 3 defense and I'm supposed to be the offense, I guess I should always take the offense. But it's been really nice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Current funnel is good enough for me to want to play that as a blue, and Sigil has been decent enough to play as a blue.
So I had current funnel and sigils in as blues when I was on them. The biggest reason that I have currently cut them anyway, and again, I'm not saying that my way is right. I'm having a lot of fun doing it this way, and so I will say, gauging my Aurora experience based on fun versus like min-maxing has also been part of the appeal. Because I feel like lately, whenever I play Assassin, I'm like looking for that extra inch. Whereas with Aurora right now, it's just like, hey, where can I have the most fun? Cutting the blues made me go like that much harder in on my Ravenous Rabbles, so much so that I'm back to being a Gorganian Tome gamer.
Okay.
Does that let you know where it kind of Runeblade I've landed on at this point?
Yeah, you're doing Runeblade.
I'm doing Runeblade. So I was like, well, okay, current funnel is like I get it, and Sigil, same thing, but I was like, or I could run all of these other like 0 for 4s and Gorganian Tome. That's why I said I would make Mara proud with my current list. It is 0 for 4 madness.
Yeah. Because some of these cards are, quite good in general. Like, I also just it gets to a point of frustration where I'm sitting here going, okay, yep, I own all this, I own this, it's all good. Okay, I'm missing some of these. That sucks, but it's fine. What is Sizzle? Oh, fuck you. Static Shock. God damn it. I guess I need the Aurora First Strike deck. I need 2 of them. But
do you need 2 of them?
If it's First Strike, they don't have 3 sets of 3. They have sets of 2, right?
Yeah, you know what? You might be right, because it's probably for Blitz. If I could reach it behind me, I would grab it and tell you, because I've got one of each for when Stark and I did the Learn to Play at Gen Con. But now that you've said something, I think you might be right.
Yeah. And then I'm debating on a lot of sideboard slots and stuff still. But I mean, the
sideboard's
deck
been the hardest part for me.
Yeah, it's really difficult, because I know you need AB1 at some point in time. It's just, it is what it is.
Well, you know what helps you with that, don't you?
Lightning Greaves. Yeah.
Quillhand
just does it. Quillhand does great. Yeah. And so it's like, I'm trying to think of like, what matchup do I want to concede? Like, if I was playing into Wizard, I think I'd want Shock Charmers instead of having Quillhand. If I'm playing into Kano specifically.
Right. No, I agree.
And then Carapace is really good in some matchups just because of the blocking, but I don't think it's fittable. I think you almost always have to have Tunic. And so that becomes something that you can't really do. Crown of Dichotomy is just fine. And it's like, I don't really want to ever be doing that if I can help it. So it leaves me with like AB1, Spell Void 2, and then I can always like maybe, because you don't have enough blues anyway. So trying to fit in the head slot maybe against Kano, like finding something there. It's like I said, it's difficult.
Right now for my sideboard. So current equipment suite that I'm just running is Crown of Providence, Tunic, Lightning Greaves, Vexing Quillhand, and then I've got Starfall slotted for main weapon.
And Reaping Blade in the board.
Reaping Blade is in the board. But then I also in the board, I still have Balance of Justice, because I think brutes are going to be relatively popular, and having that for Blood Rush plus the 2 block feels better into them. Also other like Wizards and or Rune Blades have the potential to be drawing more than 2. So I think that it's a worthy potential inclusion. But then I also have Shock Charmers and Spell Fray Tiara, because I was valuing the Spell Void over the AB because I have no blues anyway, but also just trying to mess with their math. But then the other cheeky thing that I've got in the board right now anyway, Shock and Vaporize.
Yeah, Vaporize. Yeah, Shock Vaporize is...
yeah, so that's in the board. It's not in the main just because, again, I'm trying to keep even my yellow count low. It was trying to be hard Cheerios, but that's in the board. Exude Confidence is currently in the board. That might end up making its way full into the main. I've been really liking where that has been going. Lack of...
Are you nimbleisming then?
No. Because you've got, where did it go? Electrostatic discharge was already there.
It's an instant,
Yeah.
but yeah. Because you could probably do this as a...
Same thing with lightning press, because you can play it, hold priority, lightning press it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
no,
stuff
lightning
like
press
that.
is great.
So I didn't feel the need to nimblism. It very well could be there. So I have some unsettled spots in the sideboard. I was messing around with Snapdragon Scalers to see if I liked it better than Lightning Greaves, just because not paying for it is sometimes relevant when you have so few ways to pay for things. Like for most decks, it's a no-brainer to run Lightning Greaves, but when they're on 0 blues in the main, I was like, well, let's see what the difference is. I think so far I still like Greaves more. The block and the activations is relevant, but I was messing around with it, so that's at least currently in the list. And then you were saying Nimblism. The card I was messing around with in the board, because I was thinking to myself, like, really, I just don't want to like get fatigued, but I still want to throw gas. As I was trying to run premeditate.
I know. Hard.
I don't think it's as hard as it sounds, because I know it seems weird on the surface, but you're already committing to cards like Lightning Surge from the arsenal, right? Or at least I am.
Yeah.
But also cards like Gone in a Flash, a lot of times will just like end the turn in your hand anyway. So jamming it in there is not a problem. There's also a few other ways that I was potentially either drawing cards or making ponders. The 3 snatches, obviously, if that's hitting at the end, you draw the card and it goes straight to arsenal. So there was a lot of ways that theoretically I could do that, but it probably should just be nimblism.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like thinking to myself, hey, could you make this deck full casino? But you probably can't. And by full casino, you have to play Tome of the Arknight. But
well, we can't.
Yes, we can. Tome of the Arknight's not banned.
Oh, that's one of the books that didn't get banned, huh?
Right. That's one of the books we can read. That's like Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
So
I feel like if I was going to do, so my honest, here's my honest assessment. It's actually very interesting the way this ended up being designed, and thematically, I like that the lightning heroes do rely on instants because they should be lightning fast.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish I could fit.
Win.
Yeah, really wish I could fit Sonata in, but I think that's too.
Shit. Yeah,
I feel like that's too casino with the instant count that you have.
Yeah, you'd have to switch it to being closer to a less instant heavy deck. The reason it worked so well in Briar is just because it made embodiment of lightning happen really, really easy.
Right.
So that's kind of why it was so good in Briar. I'm trying to build Briar Living Legend right now, and it's a fucking like it's hard.
Yeah, because there's so many good things.
Right. It's like, can I play 90? And no, you don't get to play 90. So it's like, I can play Plunder Run again, which is great. I can take something bad out, or something that's, lukewarm, but there's so much gas in the deck that you kind of don't want to. And then you have the option of like, okay, are we a Ball Lightning deck? Are we not a Ball Lightning deck? Are we a Channel Lightning Valley deck? Are we not a Channel Lightning Valley deck? Are we a Channel Mount Heroic deck? Are we not a Channel Mount Heroic deck? So it's all over the place trying to figure out how Briar works in all of this, but it's I'm trying to figure it out. It's, if you can put together an insane turn with channel, like a Channel Lightning Valley plus, that's probably good enough. But we'll have to see here. I guess I have room in here for something else. What would I want? No, I'll think about this later. We're recording a show. I can't be staring at my decks and trying to figure this shit out. But talking through it's good.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's also my fault because I started us on this becoming Aurora episode, but I've been legitimately having a lot of fun playing the list. So
yeah, and I've been having a hard time finding the fucking cards in paper. So because I want to play it, or at least have it as an option to play in Milwaukee. And right now it's just woof. I mean, I own all the lightning valleys, so that's good. I own 0 arc lightnings. That's bad. I've covered all the Gaunana flashes, so that's good. But I don't have any current funnels, and I don't own any arc lightnings. And it's like shit. Like, well, one of those is super essential. The other one is whatever. Like, I can make it work without, but I would rather be playing what I think is optimal, which I don't even know what's optimal yet. Like, still working on that.
All right.
And then
I
also
know
have
you're
to build
going to
Briar.
think. So I also know you're going to think this is a joke, but if there ever does come a time that you cut Tunic, my other hot take is I'm not convinced that you run Carapace.
If I'm cutting Tunic, I'm probably playing Blossom of Spring or something.
The reason I say Tunic, I guess I shouldn't say cut. I mean, if you're ever sideboarding it out, because you were talking about sideboard and maybe wanting Carapace. Mm-hmm. So my hot take for that is that if you are looking for something in that slot, I think that instead you do actually run the Helm and Chest duo.
The Guardwell, the Arcanite duo.
Yeah.
I was looking at that. It's in my maybes in the underneath because it's Spell Void 2 on your chest.
Yes.
At that point in time. Plus, if you have blues and you go under, you have AB2 there. You have Spell Void 2 on your arms.
Well, no, you'd have AB3 on your head. So like that, if you have a blue, it's AB3 and then the Spell Void 2 on the chest.
It's still only AB2.
No, it's AB3 for a blue.
That's right. It is AB3.
Yeah.
That's right. So you have AB3, Spell Void 2, Spell Void 2. So you have effectively
potentially
7 prevention.
And when you're talking about going in the other way for prevention stuff or whatever, potentially still 5 additional physical. And given that I think both Acilio and Verdance are going to be playing physical damage as well. Like, I don't think there's a way around it with their current setup. Having access to both, I think, is actually pretty solid. And when you're trying to be offensive and then whatever, like having the Spell Void 2 on the chest and the Guardwell and blah, 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 I think it's relevant. And the only reason I mention it, I'm having a harder time doing so with my Aurora list because it's so Cheerios, but I also was toying around with an Acilio list, and I do like it in the sideboard for Acilio because you already start with less health anyway, right? So your helmet value is already there. Like that's easy to get. But then on top of that, just being able to have access to the other stuff, I think is really, really nice.
That makes sense.
Acilio, at least the way I was playing him, almost feels like the CC version of Emperor.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Because you're doing a lot of attacking, and honestly, you want 0 cost surge spells that you can amp.
Yeah, like, it's either that or you want your 0 cost like lightning go agains so that you can, like, your ideal play pattern most of the time is something like, I say ideal. Let's assume you don't have access to like specializations or whatever, because if you have his specialization, there's bonker shit you can do. But ideally, it's like, lightning surge from the arsenal with go again, and then a fry with go again, and then you play a sizzle as an instant so that you can amp for free, and then you play your zap essentially, right? Your 0 cost zap. Yeah. And now, so you've went like 0 for 4, 0 for 3, but then also 5 arcane, right? So you force them wide and you force them weird with the other damage, and so you're going to leak. It's just the biggest problem I've had right now is that can you keep up? He's very good at generating consistent pressure, but if other decks have their good turns, right? If a Brute has like a good Blood Rush on you, or if Florian has a good like, sending 12 and 12, then you just fall behind. So you kind of punish decks, at least again, so far with the way that I was playing them, you punish decks for being inconsistent, but you can just get walloped with nothing you can do about it. So
right. Yeah. And that's always going to be a risk. All right, let's move into like talking about news and shit. So,
there was news.
Sort of. Calling Sydney happened. So it was a limited event. So it was sealed into draft for the Calling. It was won by Darren Ying. So congrats there. Interestingly enough, it was an all New Zealand and Australia top 8. So that's kind of cool for the Calling Sydney. I was very interested in that.
Defending that home turf. No folks flying in and stealing it.
Nope. That's something that didn't happen. Then there was Battle Hard in Sydney. Now, there's a lot to say here. So we're going to talk about the event. So won by Stephen Young on Kano and a Kano mirror, because
Blasting.
Kanoing, just blasting. There were 2 Kanos in the top 8. They met in the finals. 2 Auroras, 1 a Florian, 1 Enigma, 1 KO, and 1 Katsu. And we're talking like old school Katsu. We were full on Mugenshi people.
Yeah. And my hot take about that, first of all, I'm happy to see the Ninja Turtle back. But my hot take about that is somebody that is just prepping for Ira being legal.
Pretty much.
Because I saw that list, and so I checked it out. I was like, this is a deck that's just, like, granted, there is the Mugenshi stuff, and that is still very cool. But I look at that and I'm like, is that better than just doing Ira things, though? I don't know.
Yeah, that's hard to say, but it's definitely awesome to see Katsu up there again. Didn't win, but definitely put on a show to get there. So there were, the meta was weird, one. So the meta was 9 Leviah, 9 Enigma, 7 KO, 6 Dash, 6 Kino, 5 Aurora, 4 Bolton, 3 Florian, 3 Verdance, and then everything else was 2 or less. Notably, Zen and New, just not there. Uzuri, nowhere to be found.
And I'm not surprised by that because, as I had said before, I think that New's performance really did require Zen to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that she still can't do well. Like, if she showed up in a top 8 tomorrow, I still wouldn't be shocked. It's still a good deck. It's just that it was having the performances it was because it could target Zen. And then as we started to see, the late rise of Uzuri, it was kind of on the back of the same thing. Uzuri has not stopped being a good deck, but it's just fallen back to kind of where it was before. But it was starting to rise up again because folks had figured out how to target Zen with it. And as I look at this, right, this meta where we see the 9 Levias and 7 KOs, and I had said before, New struggles into brutes, or at least if she has a better matchup, I haven't been able to crack it. So this is not a surprise to me. And this is also, I'll be honest, kind of what I expected. I expected brutes and enigmas to gain in popularity. Brutes because Blood Rush Bellows is still around, and when you see a bunch of cards that say draw 2 on them get banned and there's one still around, you naturally go, okay, why is this one not as good as the others? How can I abuse this? And like, if we're just being honest, right, full disclosure, KO was already good before Zen, and so
also
if
true.
He falls off, he's also a natural look. The 9 Leviah, I would expect Leviah and KO to have switched spots in terms of representation, but otherwise not super surprised by this. And then Enigma makes an awful lot of sense because if you don't have as much of the threat of all of that go wide, and you want to play a hyper defensive deck, that's a way to go. Illusionists have also always been very popular, so people might feel like, okay, now I can play the deck that I wanted to play, so that makes sense. And also, again, if you expect brutes, I think she's pretty good into brutes right now, personally, because she can go so tall with the defense.
Yeah, interestingly enough, again, we already mentioned the first set of them, but then no Victor, no Azalea. Things that we have seen be kind of towards the top on a pretty regular basis, just nowhere to be found. So we may just be like in that evolve state. We also just might be in a spot where people wanted to try new things. Like, we don't see any Acilios, but we do see 5 Auroras, 3 Florians, and 3 Verdances. It's like we have the new heroes represented, and maybe that's part of it, trying to catch them off guard, and do something different. Looks like Aurora was the big winner in trying to get across that way. But the Florian decks were interesting because they were in super different stratospheres trying to do stuff. Like the one in the top 8 was a 9 count your blessings, super fatigue Florian playing Dread Scythe. Like, just straight up, I don't care type of deck. And there was a kind of a controversial spot in there where in the quarterfinal match, which was on stream, the Florian player played and decomposed a Plowunder, and when that happened, their opponent bottomed their arsenal, but the Florian player did not, and it didn't get caught. It sat there for multiple turns. It turned out to be a Germinate that was played later in the game after the Aurora was mostly fatigued out. But whenever that happens, you have to wonder what kind of impact did it have on the game,
right,
from that standpoint. But when we're dealing with new cards, it could have been an honest mistake. We don't know, right? There's no, I can't gauge intent by watching a top 8 stream. A lot of people seem to think that it looked bad, but who's to say? We're one of our people that we talk about a lot is known cheater Caleb Van Patten, for God's sakes. So,
yeah. I mean, listen, for all the people out there, Hanlon's Razor is a thing, right?
Right.
And if you're not familiar with that, it's you cannot, or you should not anyway, attribute to maliciousness what can be explained by incompetence. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, these guys are doing well in this event. They're maybe pro players or people who top or whatever. And it's, it's not just the guys, it's the ladies too, right? If you ever see like Mara or Rhea do it or whatever, everybody makes mistakes. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're major. There's a lot of bookkeeping in Flesh and Blood, as weird as it sounds. And so we
burned them all. There's no bookkeeping.
There is though. There is Tone of the Arknight apparently. See, so
that is a legend. Well,
I forgot about it because I didn't do my proper bookkeeping. That's my point, right? Is that there's a lot of it in Flesh and Blood, and I don't think that every time that there's a mistake on camera that we need to treat it like it's the next Pummelgate. You know what I mean?
The UK Pummel. What is it? The UK Pummel. There's one in New Zealand. New Zealand is New Zealand, the E-Strike or something. And then now we have the Australian Plowunder. But again, it's a bad look because it happens on camera. It looks like had an impact on the game. There's a lot of things like that, and we are, as a community, very sensitive to the integrity of our events, and we should be. Honest to God, we should be. But I think that in my mind, this is Hanlon's Razor until it's not, until you prove to me that it's not. Like, and there's plenty of ways that you can kind of determine that it isn't as simple as, right. And while it did look bad, we'll see if anything comes of it because I'm sure there'll be an investigation or anything else, and we'll see if there's anything that comes of it. But yeah, it's an interesting spread of heroes and a fascinating top 8 that just ends with 2 people blasting each other. So I know that, I think it was in a video that Majin did comment that he thinks that Kano, with the new cards and everything else and the strategies out there, that Kano is probably very short for this world in LL. So Kano might actually be one of those in like the best deck contention to get and be able to pick up multiple events very quickly, especially with the ProQuest season coming up, in which we pretty much know we're losing Dash. But we'll have to see about if Kano and KO pick up a lot of percentage and kind of get close to. So, and then obviously Worlds is going to have something to say about that too, as far as who picks up the giant chunk of points from Worlds. Um, anything else before we move on from Sydney?
No, I think that about covers it. I don't know how much more of a window we're really going to get ahead of Worlds, but I will say this was not really a shock, and it's a lot of what I would expect to see at Worlds, barring something, getting out of the bottle on the internet, right? So
Right.
obviously in terms of events, I know that there's nothing, but we all know that
Battle
before,
hardened Milwaukee. That's
yeah, but we all know that before a big event like that, there's, psyops here and, best decks there. And when I say best decks, I mean everybody's saying like, hey, I found the secret sauce, but I'm looking forward to the discourse. It's one of my favorite things.
It is fun. I think there's also, is it a calling in Portland? I want to say. Yeah, there's a calling in Portland. But that's after Worlds. So
I was gonna say I didn't think that was before Worlds. I thought that was after.
No, that's after.
Isn't it like in November, right?
Yep, late November. So yeah, you have a Battle Hardened in Washington D.C. and a Battle Hardened in Milwaukee, and then ProQuest season, and that's it before Worlds. Fascinating. Yeah, so we'll have to see how this all plays out. It's going to be interesting. I did see on the mothership that they are finally opening up distribution to Mexico for Flesh and Blood. So that's awesome. That's another big win for the global reach of the game. So Mexico and just Latin America in general has definitely produced, in the history of card games, a lot of notable players, and has always had a very large and passionate fan base. So the more you dip into those international pools, the better it is for everybody. So I'm very excited to see what grows from there, because Mexico is a big market, and getting that distribution locked down, so you just get more and more of the game going global, is just better for the long-term health. That's just as Josh Scott would say, that's all I got to say about that. You want to add anything?
No.
Okay.
No, I think that's fine.
It's a news light week. We could theoretically just end the show right here and everything would be fine. Charmer could, I don't know, do something to mitigate his discomfort, but instead, I've noticed a lot of talk recently, and I think it's because of some dissatisfaction in other competitive communities. And people are, again, turning more eyes to Flesh and Blood again. I noticed that Andrea Mangucci, who is a very notable Magic player, has switched over and has started playing a lot more Flesh and Blood in Italy. I've noticed there has been a lot more conversation from the wider Magic world about Flesh and Blood and what the barriers are. I saw Frank Lepore, who's another member of the Flesh and Blood, the Magic community from back even in the TCG Player days. He was an avid writer when that was a site that did a ton of articles and stuff like that, and had a couple of really good finishes in high-level events, all asking about Flesh and Blood. And so, as always, when people talk about the game, the barrier of entry tends to come up. And there's a weird sticker shock that still happens, and I understand it, but I don't get it. With Flesh and Blood, where people will see things, you look at this Aurora list that I have built right here. It's, from how I have it built currently, it is over $1,000, right? Point blank, it's over $1,000. But this list has Crown of Providence, Findle Spring Tunic, Grasp of the Arknight, Balance of Justice, Dyadic Carapace, Shock Charmers, a playset of Warmongers Diplomacies, and Enlightened Strikes. So you're talking about stuff here that a couple of weakest links, You're talking about stuff here, especially when you're talking about the generics, that are playable in other decks. So you only ever buy them once. And so trying to explain that portion of it is always kind of a challenge, but I think we've gotten past it for the most part. Like, we understand in the community what owning these cards, why, you get the initial shock, but beyond that.
Oh, I love your puns.
Shut up.
Hey, real quick.
I can't see you, so it's
mine, just because I pulled it up on February because they have that cool pricing thing.
Mhm.
Cheapest printing for my Aurora list right now is $690. And
nice.
you could drop 165 of that if you take the Balance of Justice out of the sideboard. And while I think it belongs there, like it's not what I would describe as necessary, right? So pretty close to $500. Now the most expensive version, of course, is $55,000, but cheapest is like $500.
Yeah. So yeah, if I'm looking at this mass entry here, okay, I'll delete it. Jesus fuck. So if I look at this as a mass entry, Flicker Wisps are $1.19. Crown Province is $92. Lightning Valleys are $16 a piece. Grasp is $100. Yeah, Balance is $120. Blinks are $8 now. Jesus. Okay.
Wow.
Tell me
Really?
how you really feel. Weakest links are $55. What the actual fuck?
That's got to be holdover from. It's got to be holdover.
The price of Warmonger's Diplomacy. Take a stab, Darick.
45.
You owe my sweet summer child. If I'm buying the 3 cheapest copies online, they start at 67, then 74, then 75.
That's a lot of people that really hate Runeblade.
Mm-hmm. I own 7 copies of that card. I'm very happy about all this.
I don't even think I own a playset. I think I only own 2.
Tunics are 104. Like,
yeah, they've been around 100 for a bit now.
Yeah,
which is
nice.
Like
the cheapest printing. Yeah. So like, if you just talk about the generic cards there, you're hitting the majority of your money, but you only ever pay it once, and you're done.
I cannot believe Weakest Link and Warmongers are that much.
Yeah, I'm glad that I own those.
I'm glad. Well, like I said, I don't think I have a playset of Warmongers. I think I only own 2, because that's all I ever ran in Uzuri. I never felt like it needed to be a 3 of it. It just was there for when I needed it. And obviously for blues, you want the stealths and shreds and whatever. So that being said, I'm happy I own the Weakest Links already.
Yeah, no shit.
Because good Lord. But also,
that's a lot.
That's all the more reason why you should just run the Cheerios Aurora, because then you don't have to worry about either of those.
You sure don't. But at any rate, so yes, I guess this goes into it. Are the costs too high?
I think some of those are. Like, full stop. I think that. All right. So jokes aside, right? I do think that there are some things that could be done to help with the overall image of the barrier of entry. I do, however, think that there will always be some level of sticker shock that just cannot be avoided for a couple of reasons. So this scenario, I think, is a great example. Like, on the one hand, I think that Weakest Link and Warmongers, for example, are overpriced at what they are right now. Just sure. If I was a new player getting in, I would, unless you absolutely were like, hey, this is what I want to do, and I want to get in now, then sure, you have to bite the bullet. But otherwise, I would say, like, just wait, they will come back down. The problem, though, right, and I think that this speaks to broader the issue that I want to kind of describe here, is that the times when people tend to get into this game it's usually not conducive to avoiding sticker shock. So what I mean by that is I feel like for whatever reason, we always have the barrier of entry discussions at 2 times of the year. And it's always a month before Nationals and a month before Worlds. And I get it. They're big events. They draw interest, especially from your established veterans from other things, other games. The problem is the demand's already high. And so like right now, for example, yeah, there's people prepping for Worlds and a new set just dropped and a big wave of bans hit. So the market is the most in flux it's probably been in the last year. So now is not the best time to look. But this is when people are looking. And so the sticker shock thing comes up. If people look in December or early January, these prices are going to be wildly different. The other thing that I want to mention about the sticker shock part is that it's not always the case, and I don't want to be dismissive because accessibility is definitely a thing, and not everybody has the same hobby budget as everybody else, and we do need to keep that in mind, right? I do not want this to come off from a place of financial privilege, right? However, my personal anecdotal experience very often is that the people who have complained to me personally, like in person, whatever, like, hey, blah, 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 having discussions, almost all of them already play one, if not more, other card games. And so when they're talking about the price, it's a sticker shock because it's not their main game. It's because they're not getting out of Magic and then fully investing into Flesh and Blood, or getting out of One Piece and fully investing in Flesh and Blood. The problem in most of these scenarios is that a lot of folks want to have their cake and eat it too. And so they're saying, hey, I'm playing Magic, or I'm playing One Piece, or I'm playing whatever. And Flesh and Blood looks cool, and all the people I know who are playing it speak highly of it. So I want to get into it. But they don't want to give up their main hobby. And their budget's already stretched thin because of, let's be honest, Hasbro. So when they want to add a side gig, if you will, it's not priced as a side gig. It's priced as a main game because there's enough people playing it as their main game and take it seriously. And so that also leads to the sticker price, right? There's no doubt in my mind that if these people were, selling out of a Magic collection, or they were just not going to buy Magic going forward, or One Piece or whatever, that a lot of these same people could get into a competitive zone, if you will, for Flesh and Blood in little to no time at all. It's just that it shocks them when they don't want to fully make the jump. And I get it. Like there's sunk cost fallacy, there's nostalgia, there's all these things, right? And I'm not even saying that you need to fully get out of Magic. What I am saying though is that if you're trying to play 2 games that are known expensive hobby genres of the trading card variety, like you have to expect that, right? Look at what your Magic or One Piece or Star Wars or whatever budget is, now double it. Because that's what if you're truly trying to get into a game, you should expect to spend as much as you are on your current game. And people don't very often, in my opinion, or at least in my experience, look at it that way, right? Again, they just want I want to spend like $100 and get a competitive deck, even though that's not what they're doing in their main game. And if they are doing it in their main game, then they are not, they're like less likely to even pick up the second game. So that's the other side of the coin too. A lot of the people that I think are true like budget shoppers, right? If they're like, hey, I want to play Magic, but I'm going to play it as cheap as possible or whatever. They have like an amount in their head where it doesn't matter how the other game plays or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Like if it goes over that amount, they're just not going to play it anyway. And there's nothing that we can do about that. But yeah, my experience has been people are either looking at the game when it's at its most expensive, usually a month before a big event, or they're trying to treat it like a side gig. And neither of those are ever going to work.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's it kind of goes hand in hand with like what I want to talk about next, which we had Alex Watkins on, and fantastic guest. Welcome back anytime he wants. But he was talking about new player experience a ton, and that's kind of the thing that LSS is doing or focusing on with their convention presence is new player experience, which makes sense, right? They should double down. They should invest in that because that's what's going to draw eyeballs. That's where your opportunities are going to come from is when you have these large groups of people in a hall looking for games, putting a new player experience in front of them is smart. Like that's crucial. But at the same time, when you're doing these new player experiences, you're providing them with an early avenue into the game. You start with Ira, you bash an Ira decks. That's your first taste. Then you move on into the first strike decks, and then maybe a Precon Blitz deck. And if they're interested, they're straight into the deep end, right? Like they're going from. That's when the arms race starts, so to speak. So my question here is, what can they do to sort of bridge that gap better? Like, what is it? Is it just the armory decks? Is there a different product they can do? Like, what's the best way to make it so that somebody that can go, I really enjoy Flesh and Blood, I'd like to keep playing. What's the best thing they can do to make it easy for them to get started?
I don't know that there's a good answer for that, if I'm being entirely honest. I think that a lot of the steps that they have taken are the right steps. And I think that if there was another obvious answer, then they probably would have already done it, right? The biggest issue that you have with Flesh and Blood is that it is, like all great games, pretty easy to learn and very hard to master. Mm. And there's not a great way with a product to simulate the jump in complexity. And I think that's actually the biggest problem. Like a lot of people talk about the price gaps for things as being the barrier to entry, but I don't think that's the real case. It's in your face, and that sticker shock is certainly the thing that they're going to feel immediately. But I still maintain that all of these players that are saying, like, I can't win my armories because I don't own CNCs, are probably still not going to win games against the good opponents, even if they have the CNCs, right? Like those same people are just not. This isn't a game where like just having the cards makes the difference. Believe me,
right? No.
And if I'm being entirely honest, I also think that there's like this exacerbated Dunning-Kruger effect that occurs because of Talishar as well, because there's a lot of things that happen with Talishar, and I think that players they'll go on a streak and they'll be like, man, I went like 10-0 on Talishar, so clearly like this deck is bonkers and I'm really good. And like if I go 10-0 on Talishar, I start second guessing myself. I'm like, okay, what's 100%, wrong?
Like,
because the thing is, and this isn't to say that nobody takes Talishar seriously. I don't want to be dismissive or whatever, but the thing with Talishar is that it's not the same as a real playing environment. You don't have, first of all, you have the machine doing a bunch of stuff for you, right? So like you don't have that room for error with things like missing your tunic counters, missed triggers, etc. But then even going a step further, there's not like the pressure of like feeling the clock, and also on top of that, the opponents that you're playing against, unless you're doing like closed play testing with a group of friends or something, if you're just doing the random pickup games, there is no like Swiss rounds sense of progression, right? If you go 4-0 on Talishar, it doesn't mean that your next opponent is also 4-0, right? It could be the guy that's 0-4 trying to make some meme work. Also, even further, even if you get somebody who just went 4-0, it's an online game at the end of the day, right? Like they might be watching Netflix on another monitor while eating some Cheetos, like their cat's tail might catch on fire halfway through the match and they're not paying attention. Like yeah, I know you're giving me the weird look. But my point here is that it's just not the same environment. And I'm not saying that there's no value in it. There's absolutely still value in Talishar, but you have to really put it into context and perspective. And so for me, yes, the cost is a barrier to entry, but I think the more difficult thing is getting people to make the complexity jump. And I don't know how you do that well with an intermediate product. Like having onboarding products is really important because you need to have something available where anybody can try your game.
Yeah.
But having a very specific, like, this isn't for our veterans and it's not for the people first trying out the game. Like, how do you even get print run numbers right? How do you know that you're hitting the mark? Like, there's such a weird gray area. And a lot of times, if I'm being honest, you're kind of just hoping that your community helps you. And I will say, like, that is our best place as a community to be ambassadors. Like, obviously teaching when they're learning, that's really important too, but making sure that you don't just like wash your hands once they know how to play, but saying like, hey man, do you want advice? Do you want to, know how to get better? Do you like getting them to make that investment gets that time and that work ethic investment gets them more likely to stay with the game, in my opinion, because the game is hard. And we've seen it a number of times on Reddit threads, for example, and I've heard it from other players that, you'll get somebody who shows up for like 3 armories, but they don't win a game and then they never come back, right? And it's because they don't make that second jump with the complexity. So I honestly think that is the unspoken and bigger barrier of entry.
Yeah, and I think that part of all of this stems from the fact that Flesh and Blood in a game sense is built backwards. Everything about it is inverted from what we've expected in TCGs prior. It was, we talk about the gameplay itself all the time where the pyramid is inverted. You start off at your strongest and get weaker as the game goes on versus you build up to your strength in other games. And the other thing that we don't probably talk about enough is that Flesh and Blood was designed to be a competitive game. It was not designed with casual first and foremost in mind. That was not the intent. And every other game starts from a casual spot. You take even Magic definitely started that way because competitive card games didn't exist before then. But you look at stuff like Star Wars Unlimited. We're starting season 0, so not even the first actual season of competitive play. The game's been out. We're on set 3, and we're just starting that. Lorcana took famously, and probably to much their chagrin, took a year plus to get to a spot where they had competitive events. And they're still largely seen as a casual game. While that is good for them in the regards for what the game is and developing an early fan base, they also have existing IPs. They can lean into that. And it turns out that Flesh and Blood's identity first stemmed from, we are competitive. We are here to play a competitive card game in the Flesh and Blood, right? And from there, they built out. So because of that, I think that sometimes it catches people off guard just how in the weeds the complexity of the game is when they get past those new player experiences and they get past those sort of intro products. The learning curve just goes straight up. And I don't know if there needs to be like an intermediate format between or something else, but sometimes I think that can be daunting. And I think a lot of people will show up to an armory and, they'll lose 3 games in a row. They'll just not win. And some stick with it. A lot don't, because there is no real avenue for somebody to just kind of, oops, I win, and have that kind of serotonin hit, right? So I don't know what the fix for that is, or if there is one, and maybe there shouldn't be one. But it's one of those things that we do see a lot.
Well, I don't envy LSS because they're the ones who ultimately have to solve it. But I will, again, just say, if it was easy, then they would have probably already done it by now, right? Like on both sides of the fence. It's not something that is easy to solve if you're trying to do it correctly. I'll say that. Like, there are ways that they could try to solve it. I just think that they would cause more problems than good. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Last little bit on this. Again, talking about products in general, and this is the most American way to put anything, by the way. From a product standpoint, are we better off now than we were in Fab 1.0? I think it's a good question. I think, and we're not talking about the game. We're not talking about the gameplay. We're not talking about sets. We're not talking about design. We're not talking about development. We're talking about products.
Yeah. So, with that question of, like, are we better off now than we were in 1.0? I'm trying to make sure that I give this the right amount of, like, breadth to really sink in. But my knee-jerk reaction was, yeah, I still think that we're better off now, if only because we have a much better set system now than we did when we still had first edition printings. And if you weren't somebody who was around for that chaos, I cannot stress to you enough how bad that was for accessibility.
Wasn't great.
Just full stop was not good. And not only was it bad for accessibility, but then when you did get to the second runs, it was also very bad for the limited formats as well. Because then there became that in essence, thought process of, like, who cares about unlimited? And if you had a sealed event or a draft or whatever, numbers would tank. You'd see less interest in it, and it wouldn't even be just because people didn't like the format. It was literally just like, why they were more expensive, right? Like, why would I go spend money on a sealed where I have to pay for all the packs and whatever, and I'm not going to get the value back out of it unless I win the thing, right?
Or you open a legendary, right?
Yeah, and even then there was, like, question, like, when you think about early days, right? Like, let's just say hypothetically you're open Arcane Rising Unlimited and you open Skullbone Cross Wrap at the time, not now.
It was still worth the amount, the price of a sealed deck tournament.
What was it?
It was. Yes, it was.
I seem to remember some sub $40 Skullbone Cross Wraps.
That was much later. At the time, like, even in Monarch, a Skullbone Cross Wraps was $55.
Okay. But even then, like, that's so, like, just barely hitting it. You know what I mean? Like, You're supposed to feel good about that. And instead you're like, hey.
But then sometimes you just opened a Tunic when they were $230.
Right.
But I think there are a lot of old heads we are conditioned. I am going to just straight up say it. We are fucking conditioned, because back in those Halcyon 1.0 days or whatever, we didn't buy booster boxes. We would only buy cases, because the only way that a booster box would be worth the money is to open the legendary from the case.
Yep. Because this was also no Marvels back then, right? You couldn't get bailed out by that.
So, in order to be in a spot where you could ever recoup value out of opening a box, you just had to open a sealed case, because you were more or less guaranteed to hit an L in a sealed case. So, as time went on, especially with Monarch being Monarch, and the print run being monstrous, eventually that's what tanked all the prices, right? But we were buying 4 boxes at a time in sealed case form. And if you look today at like at our locals or basically, anywhere else, people like when they're talking about pre-ordering product for new sets, they still talk about pre-ordering cases, not boxes. So we're still conditioned by that setup. And I think it tickles me a little bit to think of it that way. But I think that I think we're better off. I think I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. I do feel like we're better off. And while we don't have that, open a legendary and you made it feeling anymore, because like, as an example, even opening a rainbow foil wizard arms out of Rosetta, though they're, rainbow foil legendary wizard arms are like $30. So that doesn't even get you half of your box cost back, right?
Right.
If you don't want it, it's whatever. You have to hit bigger fish. There are some like you'd rather hit an extended art gone in a flash than most of the legendaries in the set. And I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. I think I think the vanity products being the expensive pieces is a better thing than the necessary game pieces being the expensive thing. We still have some residual thinking and some residual, like there's price memory everywhere in this game. And price memory is the market remembering what the lowest price they paid for something ever was, and then seeing something get that price, and that encourages and engenders people to buy that more because like, oh, well, that's dirt cheap, I should buy those. And so the floor never drops past the price memory. And that is definitely a thing in this game. Command and Conquer is the best example of price memory you can fucking find. Because once somebody sees that CNCs are $75, they're just snapping them up. Because that's cheap for Command and Conquer. Okay? You find them below that, you're happy. And like super happy. But you usually don't, because that's kind of a locked in price memory. And kind of the same thing with Tunic. Like Tunic hit sub $100 like once. And people went nuts and started buying multiples. And it did not stay there long. And it's just, okay, yep, Tunics are back to over $100 for the cheapest versions. Okay, that's fine. But I think that we have this opportunity within Flesh and Blood to really meter out how fast and like what works as far as a cadence. You don't want to hit your Fab's an eternal game, and you don't want your product coming out in magic amounts of time where you're, there was a pre-release like this weekend for Magic this past weekend, and I swear to God there was one like 3 weeks ago, and that's nuts. And we're talking like full sets.
Yeah, wasn't there one? I feel like there was like maybe I'm misremembering, or maybe like you're giving me a bit of the Mandela effect, but I do legit feel like there was one like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like
I'm just gonna look it up because
a couple of weeks leading up to Rosetta, I feel like I remember.
I'm trying to see Bloomborough release date. That was one before. August 2nd was when Bloomborough released.
All right, so
and we just got done with the pre-release for a new set. That's 2 months. That's not even 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazed.
It's a shame that my camera is off tonight, because I will say my calendar is at least on September finally.
Yeah, but we can't believe you because we can't see it.
Well, it's just also funny that it made it there with like a week.
So yeah, I think that they found a nice little sweet spot, but they obviously are getting data from that, and they found ways to keep getting product and kind of, because the hype cycle is as important as anything else. You have to make sure that people are looking forward to the next thing, whatever that next thing is. So in this case, I've had a lot of people already talking about, man, when the Dash.io Armory deck comes out, that's the first thing I'm playing at ProQuest. And I'm like, it's good marketing. That's great. Like you're killing it. And there's also, there's already the laying out the roadmap and knowing that we have sets coming along with other supplemental products, and it's just really well, like the Guardian box, whatever it's called. I forgot what it's called. Master set, is that right?
Yes.
And
if you I'm going to hijack this real quick. If you live anywhere at all near Michigan and you would be interested in attending a very cool like event to celebrate the Guardian Master set, like if you're somebody who enjoys the class or whatever, you should reach out to either myself or Clark, noted Guardian enthusiast extraordinaire, because him and I are trying to put something together. Like when the set releases, don't know what we're officially going to title it, but we've tentatively been calling it our Guardian Summit, where we're going to get everybody who loves Guardian in the greater like Michigan area together and do some fun stuff when it comes out. So
you're going to build some cosplay armor and bash each other with swords?
Well, that's after a few drinks.
Okay, that sounds fun. Anything else you want to talk about with the new player experience, or we have one listener question, so we're almost through this.
We should just do the listener question.
Let's just do the listener question.
I would love to keep talking, but I am fast approaching my limitations here. Yeah.
All right. We have the one listener question from Joe Rost, first time question asker, I believe. Do you think this game could create loyalty for playing a specific hero like old school L5R, Legends of Five Rings, and clans? What would it look like? Hey, Darick, you want to talk about that?
No.
You literally just did.
Nope.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I think that they could. I think what they were talking about though is that, if I remember right from L5R, if you played certain factions in that game, there were like points you could accumulate, and then you would get like special rewards or like recognition. So I think the premise is like, if you get enough, points earned on assassin, let's say, right, then maybe you would get like a cool assassin promo or whatever.
Correct.
And to answer that, I think they could do something like that. I think that the biggest part is obviously the logistics, because you have to do the tracking and then the mailing. Small scale, they've kind of done something with the C. Maybe that's a lead into them exploring other ways that they can, mail out specifics and whatever. But
the C. Yeah, I mean, I think that there already is a lot of the hero loyalty kind of already exists organically. You definitely have stands. You definitely have. Only thing you're really missing is rivalries. That's really it. Wow. And they kind of started that like with the deathmatch arena thing, right?
I mean, yeah, but I would also, my argument would be that they do have the rivalries. It's called Guardian and Illusionist. The problem is it's a very one-sided rivalry.
Well, it's actually just Illusionists versus everybody else, because everybody hates Illusionists except for Illusionists.
Hey, I can feel the downvote already.
Oh, no, it already happened. Like, as soon as I said that. we were immediately downvoted. Like, but fuck illusionists. The rules and policy manager, the guy that writes the rules for Flesh and Blood, came on here and also said fuck illusionist. So I think that's a pretty good line. I think that's a good line to hold. Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay, Charmer, you're dying, so I'm gonna just go ahead and thank some patrons.
Yeah, I'm kind of in pain. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, okay. So we're gonna thank our associate producers. We have Andy, Sindra, Jacob, and the Salty Sea Cat. For our executive producers on up, we have Blaze Storm, value member of the Patreon, Dom Lance Good Thrust, Matt Tutokes, Pux Honest, Vintox, Iowa Judge, allegedly, Papa Mike, Philip, Rich, and Sergeant Swanson. If you are interested in becoming a member of our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/fleshandpod. Link is in the show notes. There are 6 tiers, I think, and any paid one will get you into FAP After Dark, which is our live show that we do pseudo monthly. I think this one we're aiming for kind of that sweet spot of like October 2nd-ish, just because of schedules and such and trying to get people organized. It's not the easiest thing in the world. But that's where we kind of go even more off the rails. You get regaled with stories that people won't tell on record because, for various reasons, we don't want that out there necessarily. Charmer and I are both working a professional atmosphere. We can't afford it. Yeah, if you need to contact the show for any reason whatsoever, you can send us an email at fleshandpod@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at FleshPod, but the best thing to do is just click on the link in the show notes and join our Discord. It's free. You don't have to be a member of the Patreon. You don't have to jump through any hoops. You just have to click the link, hit accept the rules, and the rules are very simple. Just don't be a piece of shit, and that will get you in. And then you can start conversing with the other fappers, and it's a good group. I think most people are pretty happy about that one. Darick, where can they find you? And please don't just say in bed in pain.
Well, they can't find me there because I'm not in bed right now. I am half sitting in my office chair. But in about 10 to 15 minutes after I crawl back to my bed, then they could find me there, sure.
Great. No notes.
In the Discord, join the Discord.
Just join the Discord. But if you need to contact me directly, you can just find me on Twitter at Logan Peterson, or you can just find me in the Discord. That's the easiest thing to do, is just find me in the fucking Discord. I'm also the one on all the Flesh. I'm the one that runs all of the socials for this thing anyway. Very poorly, I might add. But I am the one that would be replying. So that's also a great way to reach me. Yeah, Darick, anything else?
No.
Okay. We're almost at 150. You know that, right?
Yeah, I'm aware.
That puts us 6 weeks from 156, which would be 3 years straight. I don't know if I like that or not. Maybe that's when we call it quits.
Tune in to find out.
Yeah, I guess you have to tune in to find out. But until next week, until 148, we will talk to y'all later. Bye.